frightened and confused. Deng had expected the people to fear him and to obey him. Instead, they humiliated him. On April 27th, 150,000 students and 500,000 Beijing citizens took to the streets in protest against the government and in support of the students. And not just in Beijing, but throughout China, spontaneous demonstrations broke out protesting the editorial. Over the following days, the students were repeatedly ordered to return to their classes at once. The students responded by demanding democracy, freedom of speech, the end of corruption, and asking, why can't the people's prime minister come out to meet with the people? In Beijing, hundreds of thousands of workers abandoned their jobs and offices to cheer and join the students. Over 500,000 men, women, and children of Beijing lined the streets, cheering the students and openly defying the dictatorship which governed China. Tens of thousands of citizens waved from their windows and cheered as the students marched through the streets. The government's efforts to stop the demonstrators had failed miserably. The people had sided with the students. Indeed, a secret poll conducted by the government found that over 60% of adult Chinese believed that protests were a legitimate way to oppose corrupt practices. However, whereas many of Chinese leaders were angered and threatened by the students, Zhao Ziyang saw the student movement as patriotic. He cautioned the Communist Party against taking a hard line and made speeches urging openness and dialogue between the government, students, and workers. Zhao was a visionary and bold economic reformer who had helped end Mao's disastrous Great Leap Forward. And he had already purged thousands of communist officials accused of corruption. In the 1980s, he had set up telephone hotlines as part of an anti-corruption campaign, and in consequence, he had made many powerful enemies. Indeed, there have been over a dozen assassination attempts against his life. On May 4th, Zhao gave a speech to the directors of the International Association for Asian Business Development, in which he called the student demonstrations patriotic. He agreed with the students that there was a lot of corruption, and there was a need to solve these problems through democracy. On May 4, 1919, student demonstrations led to the founding of the Communist Party. Thus, May 4th was a national holiday, celebrated by a government that at the same time was calling student demonstrations illegal. Tens of thousands of students responded by crowding the streets, singing, chanting, cheering, and creating a jubilant noise that was deafening. In fact, workers, party members, and hundreds of Chinese reporters were joining the students, including almost 100 from the People's Daily, some chanting, "We print lies, the people have the right to know the truth." Thanks to the efforts of Zhao, some newspapers and TV news stations began reporting that the student democracy movement was the largest patriotic movement in the last 70 years. Others were praising the students for their patriotic enthusiasm. Demonstrations were now taking place in 11 other cities, including over 10,000 students in Shanghai. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese cheered from the sidelines, shouting, "Long live the students." After 50 years of darkness and repression, there was an infective innocence, a youthful enthusiasm, an infectious feeling of jubilation and renewal that was spreading across China. To the chagrin of Li Peng, Yang, and Deng, the democracy movement was becoming a well-organized, highly disciplined movement that was supported by hundreds of thousands of the citizens of Beijing and hundreds of thousands of students and people across China. And Li Peng, Yang, Deng, and the party elders were growing increasingly alarmed. Deng, Yang, and Li Peng began discussing martial law and the need to crush the democracy movement by military force. It was apparent that the students and the people of China